作ってる時から、あ、これはね、いい曲できそうだなっていうふうに自分も思ってたんで、やっぱり単純にやっぱり皆さんにそういう評価を受けて嬉しいですね。
Well, I'm happy to hear that, and while I was composing it, I always thought it was going to be a pretty good song. So I'm happy to hear that others thought of it that way as well.
具体的にあそこパープレイスってみんな言われてるんだけど、僕ストラヴィンスキーにその時からやったんですけどね。そこはまずでもコードが一緒だからな。でも本当はファーストに僕のインスピレーションはストラヴィンスキーみたいな曲を作りたかった。
Well, one correction. A lot of people may think Purple Haze, but actually my influence was Stravinsky. But the chord progression is the same, so I guess it's okay. Purple Haze. But I always wanted to do something in the style of Stravinsky, something in the style of The Rites of Spring.
他にだったら具体的にここの場所が誰それに影響してたっていうのは具体的には思い出せないけど、全体的なこうミュージックとか方向性みたいなのは特にバトルミュージックは僕はすごくエマーソン・レイクのパワーの中で。
There's no, well, I can't really go into specifics of which specific measure would be influenced by and which specific existing piece, but especially in my battle pieces, as an overall influence, I could mention Emerson, Dick, and Palmer.
Very old band.
One of my favorites.
Well, no. I love it. Yeah, did not find it very difficult to bring us back down to a more limited number of musical voices. That's really what this is. I mean, we shouldn't think of it as taking full orchestra and reducing it down. Instead, I mean, you know, there's some obvious things that we wanted to give that example. For instance, today we played One Winged Angel of Xanarkand, but all the rest of the material was not none of them were items that were envisioned as full orchestra effort. They were simply orchestrated for this body of musicians. So it's a different exercise. It's not, you know, the act of reduction. True, for Xanarkand and One Winged Angel, that was an exact. As a matter of fact, we had decided early on that those would be the only two pieces in Intimate. And we would make it very clear. We would take the Shiro Hamaguchi arrangement that everyone loves of those two pieces and bring it and literally telescope that or microscope that down to a little chamber version of it. And frankly, something like Xanarkand works so beautifully in that setting. In the chamber music setting, it's interesting. I find it that everything becomes almost more clear and transparent. So you can hear all the individual voices very clearly. Many times with 100 musicians on stage, a lot of the interior details might get kind of gummed up or lost, either because of the acoustic, so that it's hard actually to define, let's say, the little divises within a viola section or second clarinet is really coming out clearly enough. They have interesting material, but it's sometimes difficult in a big concert setting to pull out those little details. Whereas in the chamber music, I feel like we can really focus in on each individual voice. And to me, it's very refreshing, actually. I like working in that. And actually, the 8-bit tracks work especially well going into chamber music because they were limited voices to begin with, so it really adapts very nicely into that setting. Hopefully I'm addressing your questions. ディスタントワールドとニューワールドっていうのは
多分両立していけると思うんですよ。
I think distant world and new world can coexist.
やっぱり7、80人のオーケストラ、ミュージシャンの方がステージでやる迫力のある音楽っていうのとはまた違った10人程度の少ない人数で皆さん方のもうすぐ目の前で触れるぐらいの近さで演奏する。アーニーさんが自らバイオリンを弾く、ピアノソロもあればギターソロもあればチェロのソロっていうのもありえるかもしれないですよね。そういうなんか迫力のあるオーケストラサウンドじゃなくてもっとこう親密なコンサートっていうのがニューワールドで、僕らもまだ始めたばっかりなんでどうなるかわかんないけど、僕はすごくこの先可能性はあるコンサートだと思ってます。
It's the performance, the 70 to 80 piece orchestra has its thrills, but when you also take a small ensemble of say 10 performers, they're right in front of you. You can almost touch them, and you have Arnie himself playing perhaps a violin or piano, and there might be a guitar solo or perhaps a cello solo, and it's that kind of intimacy that can be offered in New World, and we're new at this because we just started, but I think this has a lot of potential.
何か簡単な曲をとっておいて、お客さんの中からあらかじめ一人指揮者をさせるということですね。リハーサルの時に一回来てもらって、指揮の練習をしてもらうんです。始まって1曲だけ何か簡単な曲を用意しておいて、来てるお客様に指揮ができるとちょっと素敵じゃないですか。
Perhaps it might be interesting if we can solicit a conductor from the audience for an easy piece and make them come to rehearsal and see that it works out, and then have them perform for us for an easy piece. I think that might be very interesting.
I think Swing to Chocobo is actually probably Nobu-san's favorite, that version. He's told me that in the past. But I mean, the thing is that that particular theme is marvelous because of all the different variations that it's gone through. And I think that's really something that we can feature in these medleys. I mean, I have a lot of fun when we're able to jump around in different styles. By the way, that's not always so easy to do with full orchestra. That's another thing that sometimes is easier with intimate. It's challenging doing Swing to Chocobo in all parts of the world. To get the entire symphony orchestra to swing, right? Everything's triplet kind of, right? So it's great fun to do that. But yes, of course, a jazz setting of things, absolutely. Look at his book here that he has written of styles. We have rock bands, we have a cappella choral versions of things, we have pop solo vocal songs. We do a lot of those as well. Then you have full Stravinsky type orchestral arrangements. So I mean, I think the Final Fantasy book, as it were, over 25 years, covers a lot of styles already.
僕は楽器としてはフルートはすごい好きですね。本当吹けないけど、音色はすごくフルートの音色が好きです。作曲するときはもうやっぱり昔からピアノの音色でやってますかね。
For myself, I can't play the flute, but the flute is my favorite instrument to listen to. I love the timbre of the flute. But when I'm composing, I always have the piano's timbre in mind.
For me, it's the orchestra. orchestra is an instrument unto itself. I mean, it really is. Chamber music, maybe string quartet might be a close second as an ensemble. The two violins, viola, and cello. That ensemble is very rewarding to write music for me personally. But the orchestra never ceases to amaze me with the palette. It's such a big palette of colors and sounds and attacks and articulations that you could never, I don't think it's possible, write something in one career that will take, that will utilize every aspect that an orchestra can do in terms of different performance style that an orchestra can do. I discover new things every time, and try some new things every time. It's fascinating, actually.
いやさっきも出ましたけど、やっぱりダンシングマットですかね。ダンシングマットはね、今たまにオーケストラでやってますけど、いまだにちょっとさっきのロックの部分がいまいちしっくりきてないんで、いつか手を入れて直してみたいなとは思ってますね。いまだに完成してない。
Well, this would relate to the previous answer I gave, and it's Dancing Man. I'm still not completely satisfied with the rock beat that could be in the orchestra, so I'd like to go back to it someday and revamp it.
For a while, we actually didn't attempt to try to play. We're talking specifically about Tier 4, that one musical out dancing man. But for many years, when we first started playing it, we didn't play that movement, that particular movement, because we thought it would be too difficult and it would be impossible. And when we did play it, we used the rock band just for that, and then I can do it. We need to carry that. But I must tell you, that's fun to orchestrate that one. It's tough.
そういう人も多いですけどね。僕は実はそんなに気にしてないんですけど、アナログとデジタルで絶対に違うことが一つあって、アナログのバイナルのレコードは大切に扱わないと傷がつくんですよ。割れちゃったりするんですよ。デジタルのデータは傷がつかないんですよ。で、人間って人間って絶対に人間って壊れるものを大切にするんですよ。だからアナログのレコードは大切にされたんですよ。僕は今の時代、デジタルの時代よりもアナログの時代の方が人間はもっと音楽を大切に扱ったと。それが一番の違いだと思う。
I know that there are plenty of believers in vinyl. I personally don't care that much. I don't think there is that much difference, but there is one definite difference between analog and digital, and that on a vinyl record, you get scratches, you can collect it and break the record, but there is no potential for damage with digital music. And human nature is such that when something can potentially be damaged, they value that thing much more. I think people used to give more value to simply music and to the recordings of music in the analog days. And I think there's been a lowering of the respect for the media in digital.
The other problem is, I think, just overall, or not a problem, but it's important to keep in mind that basically everything is being recorded digitally these days. Almost nothing. Almost nothing is being done recorded analog. And by analog, I mean microphones into magnetic tape. I mean, that isn't happening. So once it enters the digital domain, now you have to do something to bring it back to vinyl, right? So the point is that when digital first came out as a recording format, it was not wonderful. It was rather brittle. People thought, wow, this great dynamic range that we now have. But in fact, the first couple of Mitsubishi 32 tracks and things that we used back then were the sampling rate wasn't fast enough so that you would get a rather harsh, edgy sound out of digital. We're many years and generations past that now, and the sampling rate is so fast now with digital that I've heard the most amazing digital recordings. Just in World's One, we recorded not at 24K but 48K. Gigs and gigs and gigs of material, but the quality of the recording was so astounding to listen to the first time. I actually really do believe in digital. The idea of the warm, fuzzy analog sound, which can be very nice. I have wonderful collections of vinyl, beautiful to look at, and you're right, it's probably respect mostly. But the reality is the dynamic range is so astounding now with the higher end digital recording that it's hard to beat that. The problem is with CDs right now is that a CD is 16-bit. So even if you record at 24-bit or 48K, 24K or 48K, you have to what we call dither it down to 16-bit. You have to bring it back down to that level, otherwise you can't play it on a CD. So consequently, if you want to hear something at 24K or something even higher resolution, you can only listen to it right now mostly on a computer, I think, mostly, right? There's no, maybe Blu-ray audio might be a way to do that, but so few stereo, or home stereo machines or systems are able to play that. So we're in the middle of that change.
Thank you guys very much.
This is for both of you, Mr. Ross and Uematsu-san. What was the lowest point of your individual careers, and what kept you pushing? And what
question, really?
Yeah, and what kept you pushing to keep pushing?
大学を出て、大学僕音楽専攻じゃなかったんですけど、大学を出て就職もしなかったんですね。作曲の仕事したかったんで、就職もしないで音楽作曲してデモンストレーションテープを作ってどっかに送るっていう生活をしてた頃が一番金銭的にも辛かったですよね。でアパートを借りてるんですけど、アパートの家賃を払えないんで、窓も全部カーテンを閉め切って大家さんがお金取りに来ないようにイルスを使うわけですよ。でその中でずっと夏も暑いのに電気とエアコンとか扇風機とか使わないで部屋の中でずっとテープを作っていろんなところに送ってた2年3年ぐらいかな2、3年ぐらいは一番辛かったですね。食べるものなかったんですけど、友達多かったんで夜になるとみんな酒と食い物持って遊びに来てくれるんですよね。みんなね、友達が大事だぞ。
For me, this was right out of college. I did not actually major in music composition, but I wanted a job in composing music. So my life back then consisted of just making my demo tapes and sending it to every place. And that was a time when I was I was most financially strapped as well. So I would have my apartment, but I couldn't afford to pay rent. So I would close all the windows and close all the curtains and pretend that I'm not there when the landlord was there to pay rent. And this would be in the middle of summer when it was steaming hot, but I cannot afford to turn on the AC. I couldn't afford to turn on the fan. I just kept on working on my demo tapes in that kind of environment, and that lasted for perhaps 2-3 years. and I couldn't also afford food either. But for some reason, I had friends who would come to my place at night and bringing alcohol and food. So I wasn't starving because of that. So lesson in life: value your friends; they will come to your rescue.
I don't have any great story as good as that one. But that's good. I would only second the idea that, value your friends, your family that come to your rescue. I think there were times coming also out of college and moving forward that you have to make some decisions about what kinds of, luckily I had some choices of what kinds of jobs or engagements to take, and you make these decisions, and you need the support of other people. In the case of my wife, in the case of family, in the case of friends, to allow you to move forward and try this or try that, because at the time that you're at that stage of your career, you really don't know if these are the right decisions. I have a story that I've told before. It's not everyone gets all excited about it, but it's a story that I remember that was one of the little turning point in my life. That coming out of college, I remember that I was called. At the time, I was playing with a rock band, The Flock, local band in Chicago. Actually, traveling all over the U.S. Yeah, electric violin, right? And I remember that one day, I was still in college at Northwestern, actually, in a music degree. And in my sophomore year, I think it was, one day I got a call on a Friday that we just got an offer to be the opening act for a 1-month tour in Europe for the rock group Uriah Heep. And the Flock was going to open, right? Oh, come on. Uriah Heep. And I thought, it was Friday, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for it. And I made an appointment with the dean of music for Monday morning to let him know that I was withdrawing from school and I was going to go out and try this rock and roll thing. Briefly, but try it. And sure enough, I got a call Monday morning at 8 a.m., right before I'm leaving to go to this appointment, saying, tour is canceled. But you say, but it was a turning point. It made it very clear for me. I said, fine, I quit. I quit the Flock, I quit all that, and was just the straight and narrow kind of classical thing for a while. I ended up going back to rock and roll in many ways, but it was a turning point for me. And who knows what would have happened if I went to play.
That's why you were here.
That's right, exactly. You never know where these things lead, but you asked for it. So.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Mr. Roth.